Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining today's webinar on email fundraising optimization. Today we'll be looking at 10 email fundraising elements learned from 218 real experiments. Today's webinar is presented by CauseVox. CauseVox is an online fundraising platform designed to help you activate, rally, and engage your community so you can raise more funds online. My name is Candace. I am the customer success lead here at CauseVox, so I have the privilege of, over the last 3 years, working with hundreds of organizations, training them on how they can be successful on CauseVox, and also giving them guidance around fundraising strategies so that they can help meet their fundraising goals. Joining us today, I'm so excited for our special guest is Brady Josephson. He is the Vice President of Innovation and Optimization at Next After. So he is the real email fundraising expert here, and we're all in for a treat as he shares his insights. If you want to tweet during the webinar, you can tweet at Next After. It's next_after. Sorry about the typo there. And so before turning it over to Brady, we do have a few housekeeping items. We are going to be recording this webinar, so everyone that is joining today will receive this webinar after the fact. You can feel free to rewatch it and share it with your team. We're also going to be having a Q&A afterwards, so as Brady is going through all of his points, if you have any questions that come up, feel free to chat them to us in the questions pane. So as I said, this webinar is presented by CauseVox. So CauseVox is a community-driven fundraising platform designed to help small fundraising teams simplify and grow your online fundraising in today's connected economy. So we've really designed CauseVox so that it's perfect for any type of fundraising campaign. So we can empower your supporters to raise funds through personal and team fundraising pages for your run, walk, challenge, event, or more, to help you reach new donors by unlocking the power of your community. We've also designed CauseVox so that it's easy for you to fundraise online. So we've taken care of making our campaigns and donation pages mobile optimized, so your donors can give on any device. And we've also worked to streamline online fundraising and reduce your workload. So we'll take care of the back office tasks like reporting and receipting, so you have more time to focus on spending quality time with your donors and cultivating donor relationships. We have the privilege of serving thousands of organizations, from small community service charities and national organizations to global development nonprofits that all trust CauseVox to help them streamline and grow fundraising. So it's been a privilege to just see all these online fundraising communities and nonprofits grow in their journey as they develop their online fundraising communities and raise more over the years. So at CauseVox, we're driven by a belief that together we can help good flourish. So CauseVox is all about really empowering the nonprofits that use us to achieve their impact goals. So without further ado, I'm really excited to turn this over to Brady Josephson, who will share more about online email fundraising strategies. All right, thanks for joining, Brady.
Thanks, thanks, Candace, and thanks for having me. Thanks everyone for attending on this beautiful day, at least where I am. And Candace, if you can switch over, I'll share my slides here. That will be important. So we're gonna go over not just 218 experiments, but 250 actually. And don't worry, we won't go over all of them, but that is what the research and focus of today and what it's based on. So just a little bit more about Next After. So we're a research lab and a consultancy. So we'll go and do these forensic research studies where we'll make mystery donations. We'll do surveys of teams and staff. We have one on optimizing your humans. We'll make donations, we'll sign up for emails, and we'll collect all the information and publish these studies I just finished the data collection on a Canadian version of the online fundraising scorecard, so I might reference a few stats there. And then we take the learnings and then we actually apply them with our research partners. Here's a couple of our research partners, and we'll run real world experiments because we don't want to just keep doing best practice because someone said so at a conference, who heard it at a conference, who heard it from someone else. We're trying to actually figure out what is actually working when it comes to fundraising, and it's often opposite of what you might read, hear, or learn from some really smart people. So that's how we go and apply the research. So who cares, right? Who cares about next after and how we go about stuff? Well, hopefully it's useful and you care, because we take all of that information and we have a senior researcher who then goes and combs through it all and figures out what are the overlapping things that work, what are the patterns, what are the kind of secrets behind these different experiments. And then we package them up into these free resources like ebooks and webinars. We've got multiple courses and even free tools that can help you go about fundraising, because we also think that you can flourish when we do more together, and we're really trying to help nonprofits. So we package it all up, and that's what, again, this what I'm going to be talking about today. Specifically, I'm going to be doing a very, very condensed version of one of our latest courses on email fundraising optimization. There's 6 full sessions, and I'm going to try to narrow that down and focus this in to what I think is most important and most pressing, and most useful for you in our time today. So some of the objectives, I really hope you get a sense of how valuable email is and how you can go about doing it better, but also just get some ideas to maybe do things differently, or what you can test and what you can optimize. We're going to walk through some of the email fundraising, kind of the value of it, the overview of the process. We'll cover the 10 main elements of a fundraising email, both through the email envelope and the email body, talk briefly about the role of the donation page, and then get into your questions. So on that, a couple things. Please write things down, either on your phone or on a piece of paper. If you're trying to hold on to information, it's hard to take in new information. So just write things down. Hopefully you can come away with 3 key things. I'll show a lot of examples, and most of them come from desktop just because it's easier to grab the screenshots. But keep in mind that email is mobile. Over 50% of emails are opened on a mobile device. So when we're talking about email, we are talking about mobile. So when Candace talks about mobile design for donation pages, that is crucial in this fundraising process. We're going to share our research and what we found, but this should really just be a starting off point, hopefully a better starting off point, but one that you can go and test and experiment for yourself. And keep in mind, I'll use some individual examples. It's not just about that one example. It's an example of the bigger data set that we found in patterns. And it's not about this organization, whether you've heard of it or not, whether you agree with them or not. It's about the principles and the body of work overall. And please ask questions. Ask them in the GoToWebinar chat pane there, or you can email me, Brady@NextAfter, or my Twitter handle @BradyJosephson. There's tons more resources as well as nextafter.com and cosvox.com. All right, so why is email so important to your fundraising anyways? Hopefully you know this, but just in case, let's look at what some other people have to say. This is from the Direct Marketing Association, where they found that email marketing yields 4,300% return on investment for businesses in the United States. Or someone like Dunham & Company, who through some of their surveys have found that donors are increasingly more motivated to give online by email. So you might read, oh, email's dead or it's dying. That is not the case. It's actually just rising in prominence as more and more boomers rise in prominence with online giving. And when we look into just some of our own data, we see this all the time, how valuable email is. So here's just a few examples. So in this chart, we're looking at traffic and revenue. So we're looking at traffic and revenue by source. And in this case, this is an association organization, and you can see email here. Medium on the traffic, high value on the revenue. Or we look at this faith-based organization, pretty low actually on the traffic, that's that blue line, but high on the revenue in terms of source of donations. What about this education organization? High traffic, high revenue. Or an advocacy organization, high traffic, high revenue. We see this time and time again when we look at our clients' data and where do they get the most valuable donations and most frequent donations from. And this is where we've landed. The size and quality of your email list is the most important factor that will influence your ability to raise money. The size and quality of your email list. This is why getting emails is so important, nurturing emails is so important, and sending quality emails is so important. It is the most important factor when it comes to raising money online. And it's not just about money online. So when we look at donor behavior, donor patterns within our clients, we'll chart them out through things like this: online only donors, offline only donors, offline donors with an email, or multi-channel donors, people who give both through email or online and offline. And just by adding email communication, offline donors who receive email, they're 90% more valuable than offline donors who receive no email. So just by getting extra communication in email, even if they never make a gift online, they're more valuable to your organization because they're engaging and they're being connected with. Where they transact or how they transact isn't necessarily where they interact or how they interact with you. The same thing we found for donor retention. Just by sending email communication to offline donors, they're more likely to be retained. So there's huge, huge, huge value in email, not just for online, but total. This is why this basic strategy is kind of how do we go about getting emails through email signups. Maybe you've got offers or petitions or pledges or something like that. And then we use email to kind of nurture them and engage them, and eventually through a fundraising email, which pushes them to a donation page where we can complete the ask and they can actually make the transaction. We talk about this process as a donor mountain. I won't spend a lot of time, but basically gravity's pulling people out of a donor funnel, which is why we flip it upside down and call it a mountain. And it's our job to kind of pull people up. And at each one of these steps, when they sign up, whether they get the email, whether they go to the donation page, they're making this decision. Is there more value in what I'm about to do, or is there more cost in what I'm going to do? And if there's more value than cost, then they'll keep going to the next step. So it's our job to kind of move them all the way along. So I just want to use that as a framework that I'll kind of keep mentioning as we go about it. But this is how sign up to email to donation page, they kind of all work together. And today specifically, we're talking about fundraising email. So the intent is a donation and you're asking for money. That's the main focus of today's email. And because here's the challenge. This is a screenshot of an inbox. It's chaos, or it can be, right? We get tons of email every single day. So how do you compete in a donor's inbox? How do you stand out? How do you get them to open? How do you get them to read? How do you get them to engage? Well, the underlying secret that we found looking at all of our studies and all of our data is actually something that has nothing to do on the surface with online fundraising in terms of tactics, and that's empathy. In order to reach more donors, we really have to empathize with who they are and what's going on in their inboxes so that we can stand out and reach them. So that's a kind of undercurrent that will be throughout this whole presentation. And the key principle at work in good email fundraising that we found is this principle: people give to people, not email machines. This is a poster that we have in our office that we get to walk by all the time. Well, not me, we're based in Texas, I'm in Vancouver, so I only get to see it like once a month, but most people get to see that. And it's a mantra that we believe, not just because it's what works, but it's also how we think we should be empathizing and treating donors. So just a quick summary: email is incredibly valuable and important to your fundraising. Emails work with your website and other emails, a donation page. These all work together to create this case and great experience leading to a donation. The underlying secret is empathy. We'll talk a little bit more about how to do it. And the key principle here is people give to people, not email machines. All right, so let's get into these 10 elements of a fundraising email. So the first thing is we got to get people to open and engage the email. This is where the email envelope comes into play. This is things like the sender, the reply email, the send time, the subject line, and the preview text. So what does this look like to the reader? So let's go back to this chaotic inbox and we'll pull out one example here. We'll pull out this one. So what does the email envelope look like for this? Some different email providers, so this is a Gmail screenshot. Different providers send some of this extra information on the right. So I'll show you what it all looks like here. So the sender, this is who the email is from. Sometimes you just see the name, sometimes you see the name in the email. The reply email, this is who, if you reply back to the email, this is where it goes. The send time, sometimes you just see the date when it's in your inbox, sometimes you see the actual time, but this is when it is sent. The subject line, right? So we're all familiar with subject lines. This is kind of the teaser of why you should maybe open the email. And then preview text, which is actually, it's relatively new, but it's very underused. And this is kind of like an extension of the subject line, and it's a preview of what's to come in the email. So those are the elements of the envelope that we'll go through. So before we can understand how to best use the envelope, we need to understand how we or how donors use email envelopes to manage their inbox. And the main thing is this: it's triage. If your inbox is like anything like mine, you are triaging it all the time. You're trying to sort and flag and star or whatever system you have. Send it back to yourself, boomerang it. We have all these different systems to help us manage the volume of emails that are coming in. And we can only triage well using something called impression. So impression is what allows us to take in tons of little bits of information kind of subconsciously without even knowing what's going on and make snap decisions on whether we should read it, delete it, send it back, star it, flag it. This is all based on impression. And this is where testing is hugely, hugely important. Our conscious mind can only process so much information. And so even if you asked a donor, or even if you looked at things like what kind of subject lines would you like, we have a hard time articulating what it is that stands out to us. And so through kind of repeated testing, we can uncover more of the subconscious of what donors actually open, what they actually click, because the subconscious mind is just cranking out information every single second. So as a starting point, our friends at Litmus did this survey and said, well, what do you look at when deciding to open an email? And this is what they found, is that the first thing is generally the sender or from name, then the subject line, then the preview text. But those three things are kind of what comprises the impression or that snap decision that people have if they want to open it or not. So these are those main areas. So up top there, you can see again in the Gmail desktop, those are the main things that people are looking at. And then if they're kind of get different information or look at the email, that's where it also looks. That's what I want to spend the time on the email envelope and looking at how can you prevent getting deleted or ignored. So let's start looking at one experiment in particular that we'll kind of use as a case study as we go. So this is a nonprofit that offers free personal websites for people who are in a health journey, so often like cancer or something like that, where they'll raise funds and support for their family or a cause. This nonprofit was running a fundraising campaign around Mother's Day, and they wanted to test a different approach. So here's what they did. On the left here, we have the original. So it's from Sona Mering, and the subject line is moms equals the heart with an emoji of Caring Bridge, and then it goes into that preview text. Dear Jeff, mother's name of love. And then on the treatment, this email is actually from Camille Shield. The subject line is you amaze me, Jeff. And the preview text there is, Jeff, I'm Camille, and you, Jeff, you're seriously amazing. This is what we're going to use as a case study, right? So here's just a little bit more information. Sona is the founder of Caring Bridge and sends a lot of emails. Camille is actually just another user, and donors or email recipients have not seen an email from her prior to this. And here's what we found. The treatment email helped increase email opens 137%. So let's look at the sender and subject and preview text and try to figure out maybe why that could be. So is the sender line a significant contributing factor? Well, if we look at it, even though the sender has been sending a lot of emails, the new one with Camille Shield strikes more curiosity. And also, if they've been getting a lot of emails and they know that Sona is the CEO, it might be more believable that someone like Camille would send an email as opposed to a very busy CEO of a large nonprofit. So in this case, the sender actually played a role in who would open the email. We actually ran a different test with the same email that just had a different sender. One was Sona and one was from an employee called Kelly. And in this case, Kelly helped increase opens 6.3%. So often we send things from CEOs and board members and famous people, but really it might be someone else. It could be someone unknown even that can help increase open. So one of the things to try is try sending emails from a different person. If you always send it from this person, try sending it from someone else. The other thing that can happen is we can start tuning out emails, right? We see Sona, we go, oh, it's a fundraising email. Where you go, Camille, you go, what's this about? So that's something to think about and keep trying. And a pattern that we generally see is that emails generally perform better when it appears to be sent from a realistic representative and not a collective. So here's a few examples of that. On the left, we have the organization, and on the right, we have a person, right? So B up top, A down below, B increased opens 28%. Then we have another one, name with organization, or just name, just the name increased opens 18%. And this is one of our tests. So Tim, who's our founder and my boss, just his name versus just Tim and just comma next after. Something as simple as that decreases email 9%, decreases clicks 20.7%. So another thing to try is try sending emails from a person, not an organization. Just going through that Canadian fundraising scorecard, only 25% of emails that we scored were sent from an individual. 3/4 were sent from an organization. And if anything, it should be the other way around. All right, so what about subject lines? So now there's tons and 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 tons of stuff out there about subject lines. CauseVox has a couple of great posts at least, if not more. I won't dive too much into all the specifics about subject line, but I do want to talk to you about two main ways you can go about writing subject lines. And to make the case, I'm going to use as an example of, say, a voicemail. So there's two things you can do. You can appeal to the topic, or you can appeal to the conversation. So in the first example of appealing to the topic, say my boss Tim left me this voicemail and said, "Hey Brady, it's Tim. I have a question about taxes and enrollment. Can you call me back?" They're appealing to the topic, right? Taxes. A better way to appeal to the topic would be something like this. "Hey Brady, it's Tim. I have a question concerning your paycheck and health insurance. Can you call me back ASAP so I can get everything to you on time?" That's a phone call that I would return. I don't know about you, but anything about my paycheck and health insurance, yeah, I will make that call. Right? So that's how we can appeal to the topic and make things relevant and to me and who I am and where I'm at. Versus something like appealing to the conversation, where Tim might leave me a voicemail like this. "Hey Brady, it's Tim. I've got an important question I need to ask you. Can you call me back?" So the difference between these, when you're appealing to the topic, it's about, in this case, like taxes or health. And below, when you're appealing to the conversation, you're just trying to appeal to the sense that the conversation is worth having in the first place to lead to the next step. So while appealing to the topic can be very powerful, like that example with my health insurance or my paycheck, it does require you to know quite a lot about your audience, maybe who they are or what they've done. It's a pretty sophisticated approach. It's something that we can do with CRMs and different tracking, but most of the time, nonprofits and organizations that we found have a hard time capturing and using that data and information really well. So in that course, and what I want to talk about today is how can we use more levers to appeal to the conversation, because it's a little bit easier to do. So in our research and study, we kind of came up with these 5 different levers to appeal to the conversation in your subject line. The first one is mystery, to kind of leave some info out completely and intentionally, so people go, "What is this about?" Kind of lean in a bit. Utility, this is pretty direct, but implies something that will benefit or progress them, something that they get. You, sometimes you just use the word you, or you use their name, but something that personalizes it and makes it feel like it's for them. Recency, it's often about dates and times, maybe weather, things that include reference to something kind of recent or relevant. And authenticity, so it either includes something natural or authentic, something that a human would actually say, or on the negative side, it's unnatural or unauthentic, which a lot of marketing can end up being. So let's look again at that kind of introductory case study experiment in the subject line this time, where we see the mums of equal Heart of Caring Bridge. That's not bad, right? It's pretty direct. Maybe if you're a mom, you can identify and connect with it, but if you're not, like me, I'm not a mother, maybe I don't identify with it or connect as much. So it's topic-based, but it's not really urgent or that important, right? Whereas in the winner, now we have this thing, "You amaze me, Jeff." So right off the bat, you got you, and then the name Jeff, that's who the sender was. So you reference the name and them by name. So right away, it kind of pulls in your attention. But then there's also this element of mystery, right? Like, why do I amaze you? And like, who are you? What are you talking about? So it operates on a few of these different principles if we look at it. It has elements of mystery, it has elements of you, and it has some elements of authenticity. It kind of feels or looks like an email that you might actually get from someone that you know, or someone that actually cares about you. And so we cover this more in our class, but our senior researcher actually put together this kind of formula, or this heuristic of how you can kind of look at creating an email subject line that appeals to the conversation. And basically the formula is something like utility and mystery. These are kind of really important factors. If someone gets something or they're really intrigued, they're more likely to open. Then you have recency and the factor of you. These are factors of 2. So it's also important, maybe less important than the utility mystery side. And then on the negative side, if it comes across as being very inauthentic, it can have a damaging effect to what's going on. And this is a tool that we actually created, so you can download this from our site or just email me and I can give it to you. But here's some keywords and phrases for each. So utility, an idea, a guide, a course, a book, free gift. Mystery, kind of, did you hear about, is an idea for you. You, again, you use their name or your. Recency, again, things like today, tonight, tomorrow, good morning, this week, last week, Monday to Sunday, something like that. And some unauthentic examples. So if you don't know their name, if you're kind of coming across too salesy, it can lead to people actually feeling Like they don't want to get your email. So one way to kind of use this heuristic, and it's actually something you can try, is start out by writing out a subject line with the primary focus of the reader's benefit, not your benefit, the reader's benefit, the donor's benefit, of importance or growth. Then kind of rewrite it and take away a little bit of information to add that little bit of mystery. Now try to add a recency cue. Can you tie it into an event or a date or something like that? Now add in some you language, their name, made for you, something that kind of shows it's personal and for them. And then finally, make sure to check that it doesn't come off as opportunistic or self-centered. Here's just a few examples of that. This one we have today, and then we have on this one, don't wait another minute, right? Kind of sounds marketing speak. Decreased email opens, right? It's not a conversation, it's being sold to. We don't like that. What about TikTok versus time is running out? Kind of similar, but time is running out. Maybe it feels like we're being pressured. Are you with us? Only a few hours remain, or it is important that we remember. Big increase in email opens. Or bring the greatest message in a generation. Nice, powerful statement. Or an invitation. An invitation increases almost 45%. Remember, you have to be authentic in the subject line. All right, and now the last one is preview text. So what's the deal with preview text? Let's look at this chaotic inbox again. Zoom in and just pull out a few examples. This is what that preview text is actually, right? So it says, we love Connect Place, see my son, will you help us care for children, love compassion. This one, can't view this email, click here to view it in a browser. These are those different pieces of preview text. A lot of email providers have some default text, and a lot of them will help you override it and write it differently if you want. But this is kind of an extension of the subject line that people are using to, again, make their decision whether or not they want to use or whether they want to open your email. So let's look back to our case study example. Where here we have, Dear Jeff, mother is another name of love. So if the goal is to personalize things, right, we want to be communicated with, not marketed to. The goal is someone's email to come across as personal, then this isn't maybe the best. You know, it's like someone starts a conversation, it's mother is another name of love. That's the saying on a crotch-stitch gift I gave my mom. It's a weird way to start a conversation, and you kind of feel like, oh, they're just gonna be shouting at me, right? Who starts a personal email like that? Whereas opposed to something like this, hey Jeff, I'm Camille, right away introduces herself because she might not be known to Jeff. Jeff, you're seriously amazing. You, so right there, Jeff twice, you twice, and says why she's writing this email. You can start to get that glimpse right in this preview text already. And there's ways that you can even try to use the preview text to make it more useful. This is a test that I ran with Next After. So on the left there, I just had a continuation of the email, how it started. You know, happy Friday, Jane. Hope you had a good one. And then on the right, we tried to be like, here's what's in it. Instant donation pages, email subject line, what I learned, decrease 8.8%. The preview text tips your hand to what your email is about, but also what your intent is. So if we look back at these examples in the inbox, look at these. Can't view this email in your browser, email not displaying correctly. Instantly we're saying sales email, marketing email. It's not something that you maybe want to read. So we'll flag them right away and we'll delete them or ignore them. So one of the things you should try using preview text, like the start of your email, hopefully it's personal, without that junk, or as an extension of a personal subject line. That's one way you can try to use the preview text. So what about the other two? Just real quick on reply email. The big thing here is just don't have a do not reply email. Nothing says please engage with us like do not reply. You want to have something that feels human and that there's a human on the other end. So don't do this. Don't have a do not reply or things like that. You can create like an alias email. There's a lot of ways around this kind of non-engaging way to do it. And one of the most underrated email metrics is the reply. If you can get donors actually replying back to you, answering questions, asking questions, that's unbelievably valuable. So one of the things you can be trying to do is how many replies to your emails do you get? Because it shows engagement. It also shows that they are thinking and believing that they're being discussed with or engaged with on a personal level. The other thing, send time. I know this is something that gets a lot of interest, and we've tried all different types of days and times, and sorry to say there's no real secret sauce. It's not like, you know, Tuesday at 5:42 a.m. and you'll get donations flooding in like crazy. The reality is those other three things, preview text, subject line, and sender, are more important than the send time. But one thing that you can look at, especially in high volume periods, is look at the weekends. So we did a study on year-end fundraising, and we found that the email volume drops significantly on the weekends. So if you're looking for a way to kind of stand out from other organizations, you can look at sending emails on Saturdays and Sundays. All right, so if the goal with the email envelope is to not get ignored or deleted, how can you go about doing it? Remember, people are still subliminally prioritizing messages that appear to be personally written. And that common thread among these winning emails is that people perceive that they will be communicated with, not marketed to. It's not a t-shirt cannon just blasting you in the face while you're sitting in a stadium. It's about sitting down over coffee. It's about having a conversation. And then if we can do this at scale, it can feel like to dozens of people, hundreds of people, thousands of people, that we actually care and we're actually having a conversation with them. Because that's what we'd really love to do. If you had the time and energy, you'd sit down for coffee with every single one. So the email envelope summary, people triage your inboxes based on impressions and impulses, mostly with sender, subject line, and preview text. Best way to stand out is be perceived as personal, valuable, and meaningful. So try things like sending emails from a person and not an organization, and try different people. Appeal to the conversation, use things like mystery, utility, you, recency, and authenticity, and be consistently human in that preview text to let people know it's personal and for them. Goal is to communicate with people, not market to them. And remember, people give to people, not email machines. All right, that's that part. And now we're on to the email body. All right, so we're looking at the email. We covered the email envelope and those key pieces. Now someone's opened our email. They're ready to engage with our content. Let's talk about the design and format, salutation, copy, call to action, tone, and voice. Gonna have to fly through some of these because I definitely want to get to your questions. So if we're looking at that email that we showed earlier from the chaotic inbox, here's what it looks like when you actually open it. Again, this is in Gmail. So let's just cut out some other stuff and look at the body of the email itself. So the design and format, this is everything that goes into it, images and footers and buttons and all that different stuff. Salutation is how you start your email. Do you call them by name? Do you introduce yourself? Then we get into the body copy. This is where you communicate what you want to communicate, make the case for support, why someone should give to you as opposed to someone else or not at all. You got the call to action. Generally, it's a donate function. That's what we're talking about today is a donate, ask. And then tone and voice. This is kind of set throughout. Even in the images, you can set some tone, but specifically we're going to talk about in your copy. So when people open, how can you engage? How can you get more people engaged? And how can you get more donations once they open? Let's look at two experiments off the start here. We're gonna look at CaringBridge again, that nonprofit that offers those personal websites. This time they were running a spring fundraising campaign and had a matching gift. So they were trying to figure out how can we use email to get more clicks and donations from their emails. So on the left here is their control, right? Pretty standard looking email. It's got that preview text, logo, hero image, copy, call to action, big button, and then sign off from the person and a PS. Kind of best practice right there. And then on the right, same copy, just kind of removed a lot of the design elements. In this case, increased clicks 80% and increased donations 112.5%. So if we look at it a little bit more closely, you know, the original, it wasn't fancy. It wasn't something that screamed, you know, marketing or sales necessarily. And it was, you know, well done. It's got some good images. It's got some good logo. It still feels like a marketing message where the treatment comes across much more personally, as if the sender just sat down and wrote me a personal note or wrote this donor a personal note. Again, we want to be communicated with, not marketed to. So we did a follow-up experiment with this campaign and with this client where we took kind of the winning email format here on the left, right? Logo, button, but super simple. And we said, what if we made it even more simple and also infused it with a lot more kind of personal vibes to it? In this case, the treatment increased donations 145.5%. So if we look closer on the design side of things, we can see that the logo placement was reduced. We took it from the top to the bottom. I don't know why we think donors love our logos. Generally, they don't. Then we took it the button, instead of using the big old button. I don't have any friends who write me emails with big buttons. We turned it into a text link. So click here to have your gift matched today. And if you dive into the copy a little bit more, here in the salutation side on the left, we go, when your world is turned upside down, every connection counts, every bit of strength, every heart brought together. So it's not bad copy, but again, is that how you would start a conversation with someone, just launching in? Versus on the right, or the treatment, I know you've been using CaringBridge recently to stay connected to your loved ones, and I hope it's been a source of strength for you. Sounds more personal. Use the word you, your, you've, and starts engaging as if it was a real conversation. That's how you would start a real conversation, or more how you'd start a real conversation. And then even getting into the second paragraph, on the left are the control, the kind of preaching continues. Erica, whose six-month-old son Graham was diagnosed, and it goes into a good story, but it's still kind of preaching and talking at. Whereas on the right, it sounds again more like a human. Right now, we're in a short campaign to raise money for Caring Bridge, so it's there for you. Those need a safe place protected, and it kind of makes the case in a more human tone. So when you stack it all up with the logo and the button and the salutation and more human sounding, that's what altogether leads to this dramatic increase in donations. Now we see that particularly with design, not just with fundraising emails. So here's the year-end fundraising email, kind of more designed in images versus not, increase in clicks. But whether you're launching a new course or a new project or a new something, you can see control versus treatment, the less design, more personal one, more clicks. You got a free ebook offer, less design, more clicks. You even are featuring a video, which doesn't scream personal, but less design, more clicks. So some of the things that you can try is no or very little design in your email. Try removing your buttons, even try using raw links instead of text links, and even remove or reduce your logo's prominence. Let's look at another example, and we'll dive a little bit further into the copy or the tone that you can set. So this nonprofit was running a campaign to support for budget on Illinois Policy Institute. So here's the version 1. I won't read it all, just highlight a few things, but hope your week is going well. Good salutation, kind of goes through what's going on, and at the end, that's where you become a critical part of this effort. And then a secure link to make your donation and sign off from the CEO. So again, a pretty good email based on what we learned, right? And then here's version B. So kind of similar. It's got one less link, but the tone is slightly different. So I want to get this news to you as soon as I could. You can see the sentence, but now the fight begins. We're raising money to pressure lawmakers. I'd be honored if you could join us. And so when you actually start looking these side by side, version B increased donations 328% and average gift 91%. How could such minor little details make such a significant impact? So if we look at this in more detail, you can see that these small little changes of the copy are emotive language. The fight begins, incredible impact, desperately need, I'd be honored, every bit of support, turn up the heat. These are little subtle cues that help engage people and feel like they're more compelled to action, because not everyone's just making decisions logically, right? We know donors give emotionally and then rationalize it with logic. There's also, in the more personal approach, it's also more clear or specific what they need, what we're asking them to do and what that will end up doing, right? So we're raising money to pressure lawmakers. Would you be able to help us push this forward? I'd be honored if you can join us. Thanks for standing for balanced budgets. It's a lot more clear with what the donor's asking, sometimes, or what we're asking the donor to do. Sometimes we can use very kind of vague or fluffy language that maybe makes sense to us, but the donor reads the email and goes, what do I do in this? Right? That's that empathy side of things. Put yourself in the donor's shoes. Do you know what you're being asked for, how to go about doing it, and why you should do it? If the answer is no, then it's probably not a good email. And even at the end here, just this call to action, secure link to make your donation today and support this effort, raw link, even as opposed to that text link, helps to make it feel more personal and looks like something that an email would send. So when you add it all up, these are some pretty minor changes, but the impact was quite staggering, right? Over 300% increase. So what is it? And I don't have enough time to go into this concept, but the underlying principle of this type of language is called social presence. And this is the idea that people interact with technology, landing pages, emails, as if they were human. So this is some research by Dr. BJ Fogg. Our course goes into more detail, and our senior researcher knows a lot more about it than I do. But basically, whether you're working, reading an email or on a landing page, there's little social cues that we relate to as if those things that we were working on or clicking on or reading were actually human. So that's why the more that we can pull out those little cues and emotive content with these kind of subtle terms and expressions, right? Ramp up the heat. Those are things that humans say. Those aren't things that like robots say. Those can help pull out emotion, which leads to more donations. So that's a bit more on tone. And then just one question that we get asked all the time, how long should my email be? Here's a few examples. So from this really short email to donation page versus this one, Fewer clicks, more donations. Short email, longer email. Fewer clicks, more donations. Long email to incredibly long email, more donations. And on the left here, longer email versus shorter email. More clicks, same donation, lower average gift. So did you see a pattern? The first is that not all clicks are created equal. Just getting clicks isn't the goal when it comes to fundraising. The goal is donations, and the email moves people up. Remember that donor mountain in that process? The email is what moves people to the donation page. And if we've tricked them or they don't have a good enough understanding of what's going on and they hit the donation page and just peace out, then what was the point of the click in the first place? We see this a lot with video, where you'll get a higher click-through rate and fewer donations. People love to click and watch videos, but then go on to take an action. We see it a lot where it actually decreases conversion rate. So getting clicks isn't the goal, it's getting donations. The second thing is longer better, right? All these emails seem to be longer is better. There could be an element of truth to that, but the question shouldn't be how long should my copy be? The question should be how does copy length influence the reader's decision? And in each of those cases, they answered this core question better. If I'm your ideal supporter, why should I donate to you rather than continue my day, right? If we think about that donor mountain again, they've gone up and we've got them to the email, now they're reading, and now should I go on and click? We have the one thing to pull them up is our message. And if we undersell or cut short our message, donors may just ignore it, or when they get to the next step, they maybe won't be as prepared and then they'll leave. The message needs to be hugely, hugely focused and central to answering that question. Why should I give to you as opposed to another organization, or not at all? Or why should I just give to you as opposed to continue on with my day? And that often comes through copy. We can do some in design, but like we said before, design can be a distraction. It normally has to come through copy, and you normally need more of it than you think you do. So the question, how long should my copy be, is kind of the wrong one. It needs to be as long as it needs to be. And one of the ways to figure that out is, surprise, surprise, you got to test it. But again, generally you need more copy than you think. And here's a little short checklist. Do you clearly express the value proposition? Again, it's about empathy. It's not about you understanding the value proposition, but your donor who doesn't know what you know. Do they understand the value proposition? Do you have enough copy to answer the question why they should or want to participate in it? Why would they like to do this in the first place? And do you have enough copy to answer the question why they should believe this would make an impact? Why should they trust you? Right? Your copy has to answer those questions. And if too little, they may click, but then they may not continue on to the donation. And real quick on salutation, we talked about some of those warm greetings and how to start a conversation, but just one quick test, call people by their first name. It's really important, right? If we're trying to personalize things and have a conversation, if you don't know their name or you don't call them by their first name, that's not a great way to start a conversation, right? Call people by their first name. So the email body summary here, your email needs to communicate clearly why someone should give to you as opposed to someone else or just continue on their day. You can best do that, again, by sounding more like a human in your tone and voice. Try to use those cues. Design may be a distraction, video may be a distraction, and your email is as long as it needs to take in order to make that case. So some things to try, remove that logo or reduce its prominence, kind of simpler design. Consider writing a longer email and see what that does. And again, maybe strip down that email. Remember, people give to people, not email machines. If you're still listening, I hope you've written this down or taken a screenshot or got a tattoo. I don't know how you get a tattoo. That's dumb. Don't get a tattoo of that. All right, the last step here that I want to touch on before some questions is the role of a donation page. Right, so here's this basic strategy. We talked about email, pointing people to the donation page. We've used this example of the kind of the donor mountain, right? So you've got them to sign up for an email at some point. They said yes. Now you've sent them the email. They got through the email envelope. They said, yeah, I want to keep reading. They start reading your body and they say, oh, this seems interesting. Yes. Now you get them to the donation page, right? Good to go. Just complete the donation. Wrong. You still need to answer this question. If I'm your ideal supporter, why should I donate to you rather than continue on with my day? We have to keep the message continuing throughout the whole process. Let's look at an example. This is from the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank. Again, it's not about being left or right or political views. This is about what the concept is. And this is a really good example of continuation of the context and message. So here's the email that they sent out talking about the value of the Daily Signal, which is their kind of news source or blog, and looking to raise support. And they had a matching grant going on. So they pointed to this nice looking donation page. If you can see, there's a lot of copy. It's one of the things we find on donation pages. Again, people need to know the value and understand what they're giving to. But if you look at the email a little closer, it talks a lot about the daily signal, daily signal, daily signal, daily signal, daily signal, daily signal, all throughout, right? They're talking about the value of the daily signal. But then when you go to the donation page, there's almost no reference at all to the daily signal. So we said, well, what if instead of that donation page, we did something like this donation page? So at the top, we can talk more specifically, even just in the logo, like, hey, this is the daily signal. In the headline, donate to support the daily signal. In the copy, we can reemphasize what we said in the email, daily signal, daily signal. And it led to 272% increase in donations, plus 40% increase in average gift, which equaled a 420% increase in revenue just by changing the donation page, right? Where people came from and where they're about to go is hugely important. The donation page that you're pointing people to is about context and continuity, right? You're running this campaign, you've got ads, you've got postcards, you've got emails in your site. In this case, we're talking specifically about email. You're talking about a matching grant or the Daily Signal or a project in Uganda. And then you point them to your general donation page. Doesn't talk about Uganda, doesn't talk about matching, doesn't talk about the Daily Signal. And the donor has this like whiplash effect. They go, wait a second, I wanted to give to Uganda. I wanted to get my donation matched. I don't see anything about this here. And off they go. You've done all the hard work to get the donor all the way to this last step. You have to keep that context and continuity going with that type of content on your donation page. This is what we call a campaign donation page or a specific donation page. It's one of the 3 main donation pages that we found in our analysis. We got a guide here that has 21 different elements of what you can change and test on a campaign page. We also have templates on the general donation page and instant donation page. And so you can get all these different resources, the courses that I talked about, the studies that I referenced, and in a lot more deep detail and depth. These are all for free at nextafter.com. Something that is not for free, but is still cool, is our conference in San Antonio, where there's a pre-conference workshop where you can actually get certified in digital and online fundraising. We've got great speakers from Google and Facebook and Charity Water and some awesome people all about digital fundraising and all this nerdery. And right now you can actually win 2 free tickets if you submit a cool t-shirt if you want to do that. That's all at neilsummit.com. So I flew through like 8 hours of content in like 40 minutes. So hopefully that was useful. You got some stuff. I think we're going to go to some questions. Hopefully you type some in. If not, I'm going to give the screen back to Candace here, and she can take some questions if you have them. Also, Brady at nextafter.com and at Brady Josephson if you have questions as well.
Thank you so much, Brady. That was so insightful, and just hearing everything you had to say, it just seemed like over and over again, it was so much about the authenticity of your communications with donors and how important that is to really establishing trust with them. So I really appreciate all that you had to share today. Okay, so we're going to go into a time of Q&A, so we'll take some questions. So anyone that's still on, if you want to type those in right now, I'll be picking out a few and we'll be chatting through them. So I think the first one that we can tackle is a question from Rebecca. It's, do you always recommend using a PS in a fundraising email?
So I'll give you one caveat to all of these questions, and it's going to be test it. That's something that's really easy to test, is an email with a PS versus not. The default that I start with, that I recommend, is a PS. I think it's another way to reinforce the message and the call to action that does feel a little bit personal, right? So instead of just stuffing it with more links or more donate now, it feels a little bit more personal. But I think the question is, would a human write a PS in an email? I don't get a ton of those, but I do send those myself. So I think that's the kind of barometer, right? Is, would an email send this? If the answer is yes, then try it out, but really test for yourself. And I will say my default is to, yes, have a PS. I think it can play a valuable role.
Okay, awesome. And then Joe asked about any tips about how to actually get into their inbox instead of straight to junk mail or a deleted file?
Um, yeah, so good question. So there's a whole technical side of this about like deliverability and ISPs and things that I am not equipped to necessarily go into. I'm sure a lot of email providers, Litmus has good information on this, Campaign Monitor has some, we've got a little bit. But the one thing that you are absolutely in full control of is the more that people mark spam, and increasingly people are marking just emails that they don't want as spam, which isn't really the definition of spam. But people are blurring those lines. It's one of the key outcomes of a Litmus study. They said people just click report spam. So the more that you get reported as spam, that's bad. The more that people aren't opening and engaging your emails, the more that all these crazy algorithms view it as not a good email. The more that you send emails with big images and no text, those have a hard time getting delivered. So again, these principles also help lead to more opens because they also help bypass a lot of these like spam filters. Human spam filters like this is crap, and also machine spam filters like, oh, this is clearly a sales or marketing message. So there is elements of these that do help with deliverability, and then there's engagement, which helps, and then there's this whole other world of ISPs and things like that that you can follow up or find some other sources better than me for that.
Awesome.
Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, I think so. And so I did just get a question from Charlotte. So we focus primarily on fundraising emails today, but how would she translate some of these principles into things other than fundraising emails, like a quarterly newsletter and a event invitation?
Yeah, it's a good question. Again, caveat, test it. It's an easy thing to test if you have the tool, right? Do your classic newsletter with a bunch of images and blocks or whatever the default is, versus a more rundown email that's personalized. Like, hey, hope you're doing well. Wanted to share a few highlights from the past quarter. We went on this. We had a group of donors go on this trip to Uganda. You can see some of the photos and recap here. Just phrasing your newsletter in the same content, but just again, trying to communicate, like if you sat down and wrote this email to your mom or your cousin, how would you write it? And test it. The general consensus is that for some of those emails, like newsletters, it's kind of inconclusive. Sometimes the designed email with the blocks and stuff does better, and sometimes the personal email does better. So it's not, necessarily do this or do that. And I think it's because we're used to newsletters and content rundowns. And so we're more accepting of that, or we're more willing to kind of be marketed to in that context, as opposed to fundraising, where we're being asked to give our money, and we don't like that as much. So same thing with event promotions. Again, I showed a few examples of stewardship emails. Those should be personal, generally speaking, and it's worth testing as well. But the general principle is people want to be communicated with, not marketed to. And there's ways to do that with design and events and newsletters. But I think it's worth testing some of these principles for those types of emails as well.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm taking a look. There's a bunch of questions coming in, which is fantastic.
Awesome.
So how about there's one question from Rebecca, and she asked if you, let's say, don't have the name of your supporter in your system, what is a good way to address them?
Yeah, it's a good question. One, if there's any way that you can try to get, that name, either when they like resubmit a form or when they resubmit a donation and append the record, it's really important to call people by their name. But if you don't have it, generally something like, friend or supporter, I mean, all those terms start sounding a little like you don't know who I am. But I think that's better than blank, although that's something worth testing, dear friend versus just diving right in, because either way, you don't know their name. So the biggest thing is work hard to collect it, see if you can get it in other ways and append it. Otherwise, I would, the default that I use is like dear friend, and next after we use fellow optimizer. So if you get an email that says fellow optimizers, because we don't have your first name for some reason, but that's a bit more of like a personal endearing term, right? Because we're talking about optimization. And so if you had something like that, that's a different way instead of the dear friend.
Nice. Um, And so let me see, there's a few more questions that we can get to today before we end in just a few minutes. But Jill asked, I understand the email should appear to come from a person. Is it okay to still use a general email for replies so that that person is not inundated in their personal email?
Yeah, it is. And what's most common is you can send it from a person in their name, and then the reply email is like hello at or info at or something. What we'll often do, and this is actually what we do, is you set up an alias. So if my name's Brady at NextAfter, I could send personal emails at bradyj@nextafter.com, and then those can go to a different inbox and forward to someone else on your team. So again, that's just taking that personalization a step further. So when they look at the reply email, they go, oh, it's from Brady, and oh, it's actually Brady's email as opposed to info at, and then the gig's kind of up. So that's what we recommend, is using something like an alias to save those people's inboxes, your CEOs or whoever, and that's relatively easy to set up with things like Google Apps.
Awesome. And so there's a couple more. So I think Aura was looking for a little bit more clarification on, the long versus short emails. So Aura asked about if fundraising emails are too long, could they get boring?
Yep, that's a possibility. Again, I think I would err on the side of having a donor fully understand what their donation will do in the world, the difference that they'll make, the value of your organization, and then they can maybe skim down to the bottom and find the link. If someone's made the decision higher up in the email, like, oh, this seems awesome, I want to donate. It's not like if the button isn't right there or if the link isn't right there, they're just kind of like, oh no, I don't know what to do now, and move on. People can still scroll down. I'd rather have that problem, right? If someone's motivation is high, they'll kind of figure out how to go about completing the donation. Whereas if their motivation is low, any sense of friction, this thing doesn't work, it loads slow, this page is long, this page is short. If they're not highly motivated, any sense of friction can derail them. So I'd err on the side of longer. So if you're running a test and you got your normal email, I'd start with a pretty long version of the email, and then start working your email shorter to figure out what that sweet spot is. And again, it's not necessarily about length, it's about answering that question of why they should give to you as opposed to someone else today or not at all. If you can answer that in a paragraph, then great. Your email only needs to be a paragraph. It's just, generally speaking, we need to tell our donors more information than we think, because they don't know what we know. They don't live in our worlds. They don't love our causes like we do and know the arguments inside out, right? So we have to work a little bit harder, which is generally more copy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So I think we have time for just one more question. So this one's a little bit longer, but I think it'll be really valuable for a lot of people. So this is from Ezra. She says, I work at a large university and we have a branding issue. Alumni and donors receive communications from so many different areas on campus, departments, colleges, athletics, etc. We've standardized our formatting for email campaigns, and now the from name always includes the university name. Based on what you said, this seems like a bad strategy, since from name should be a person. Would you advise us to change our strategy? If so, how can we ensure the emails look and feel consistent?
So the first question I would ask is, why do the emails need to look and feel consistent? I think that's a very organization brand-centric approach, right? I don't think donors navigate their inbox and go, oh, athletics emailed me this way, but development emailed me this way. What the hell is going on over there? Like, no donor really does that. I think that's something that we do in board meetings around tables. Now, there's an element of like process and making things easier on us, which fine, that's a different question of like, do you need to standardize it for execution purposes? But I don't think we need to be consistent for the donor's sake. I think what we need to be consistent about is that our donors, our emails have value to them. That's what will get them to open and read and click and engage, not that the format and the design is necessarily the same. So that's the first thing, is I think that's maybe an organizational centric approach and not a donor empathize with them approach. And secondly, I probably would recommend that you take the university off. I know, for example, like I give to my university, to the School of Business that I went to, and the baseball program. So if I see emails from my coach or my dean, or even references to athletics or School of Business, I'm much, much, much more likely to open than just a general, North Park University where I went. So again, I think that's what a lot of those tests are showing. Just adding in the organization name sometimes can be a detractor. So again, can you pull that off? Can you, roll that out across a very complex organization like a university? That's a different question. But I think what's best for the donor, it's not necessarily about being consistent, and it's about being more personal and relevant to who they are. And then you got to figure out how to do it on the system side.
Awesome. Thank you so much for going into all of this. I think that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much again, Brady, for taking us through all of your amazing suggestions and insightful data about email fundraising. Again, today's webinar is hosted by CauseVox. You can use CauseVox to create and manage all your online fundraising in 2018. So if you're interested, you can learn more at causevox.com. And I'm the customer success lead here, so we can chat more about how you can use us for your online fundraising. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining and sticking with us through the Q&A. We'll be sending out the webinar shortly, so you can rewatch it and share it with your team. Take care. Have a good day.